Hey guys, tonight we're traveling back to a time when life was simpler, by which I mean colder, filthier, and mildly life threatening. Picture this: you open your eyes before dawn, your breath fogs the air, and your first conscious thought is, what is that smell? Spoiler alert, it's everything: the wood smoke, the sweat, the damp straw mattress, the livestock sleeping 2 feet from your face. Congratulations, you're in medieval Europe, and you probably won't survive the day. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to catch all the strange, sleepy stories I'll be telling next. And hey, drop your city and current time in the comments. I'd love to know who else is lying in bed contemplating dirt floors tonight. You wake up on a pile of straw that pokes through the itchy wool of your only tunic. Your body aches from yesterday's labor, and the chill in the air suggests winter is coming, or maybe it's just spring. You never really know. The roof above you leaks slightly, the mud floor is suspiciously moist, and a chicken is staring at you from a nearby beam like it owns the place. This isn't just your bedroom, it's your kitchen, your living room, your everything. One room for you, your parents, 3 siblings, and possibly that one uncle who never left. There's no privacy. If someone farts, it's a group activity. If someone coughs, you all brace for plague. Personal space hasn't been invented yet. You shuffle out of your straw bed, stepping carefully to avoid the chamber pot. Yes, the pot, because going outside at night is just asking to be eaten by wolves or robbed by your neighbors. And even if you survive the night, there's still no plumbing. Not unless you count a hole out back, which you share with every other soul in the village. Toilet paper? Cute. Try a handful of moss or yesterday's bread crusts. You reach for water, but then you remember water is deadly, so you drink ale. For breakfast, it's warm, flat, and brewed to be just strong enough to kill the parasites, but not strong enough to give you hope. You eat a heel of dry bread and half an onion. That's it. No butter, no jam, no coffee. You have to plow a field today with your bare hands and the emotional support of that chicken who's still watching you like it's your supervisor. As the sky brightens, the village begins to stir. Thatched roofs, mud walls, and people coughing up everything from dust to demons. You pull on your second layer of wool, still damp from last week's rain, and fasten it with a bit of bone or bent iron, because buttons are for the elite. Your shoes are 2 slabs of leather tied to your feet with twine. They don't keep water out, but they do make squishing noises as you walk, which is something. Historians still argue whether peasants were aware of how truly bad they smelled, or if, by some miracle, everyone's noses just gave up trying. Outside, everything is damp, as always. Mud rules this kingdom. It sticks to your legs, your tools, your soul. You walk to the fields, passing villagers already at work. Some are hauling buckets of something that smells suspiciously like regret. Others are mending fences or chasing runaway pigs. You smile politely. Everyone looks 40 but is probably 19. A nearby bell tolls. That means someone died or it's time for prayers. Either way, you mumble something in garbled Latin and hope no one notices. The local priest is half blind and only comes around when he's drunk or suspicious, which is often. As you reach your field, you look down at your wooden plow. It's crooked, the oxen are missing, so it's just you today. You start digging with a shovel made from splintered wood and passive aggression. Your hands are blistered, your back is already sore, and the sun hasn't even crested the hills. Somewhere, a child is screaming. Somewhere else, a rooster is trying to sound important. You try to focus on the work, but your stomach grumbles again. Constant hunger is just part of the ambiance. A neighbor stops by and offers you something wrapped in cloth. You open it. It's a boiled turnip. You smile like it's cake. You take a bite and pretend not to notice the grit. Gratitude is survival. You keep working, the hours melting into mud and muscle pain. You sneeze. 2 villagers make the sign of the cross and back away slowly. A third mumbles something about demons. You are a medieval peasant, and you haven't even made it to lunch yet. You finally get a break, but not because anyone said so, just because your arms have stopped working and your spine is threatening to file a complaint. You drop your crude shovel and stumble back toward the village, which looks exactly like it did an hour ago. brown, soggy, and suspiciously quiet. Now, nature calls. And no, there is no bathroom, no cute outhouse with crescent moons, no pine-scented air freshener. Your choices are as follows: a shared pit latrine outside the village walls, if you're feeling brave, a wooden bucket behind the hut, if it's still there, or, let's be honest, the side of the road. Everyone pretends not to notice, because they're probably going to do the same thing 10 minutes later. Privacy is a luxury of the future. Right now, you crouch behind a hedge, praying to whatever local saint you think handles digestive emergencies. The ground is cold. A beetle crawls across your foot. You contemplate reincarnation. You re-enter the village like someone who's just committed a petty crime. And in a way, you have. Public defecation isn't technically illegal because it's impossible to police, but if the wrong person sees you, you could be fined. With eggs, that's not a joke. You'd have to pay in actual food, which is the same as paying with your life. Suddenly, they're shouting. Two villagers are arguing over a goat. Again, one insists the goat is his because it looked at him funny. The other says he has proof in the form of a hoof print and a deeply unreliable cousin who once saw the goat wink. This dispute will now go to trial, by which I mean the local reeve, who is also the blacksmith, baker, and semi-professional drunk, will make a decision based entirely on vibes. You stop to watch because honestly, it's the best entertainment you've had all week. There are no traveling musicians, no jugglers, no Netflix. You have public arguments, mystery turnips, and the occasional pig escape. Your stomach growls, again. Lunch is a generous word. What you get is a half handful of something called pottage. That's a thick stew made of yesterday's stew, and possibly the stew from the week before that. It includes barley, maybe some wild herbs, and on a good day, a chunk of bone with flavor aspirations. Meat, rare. Beans, aspirational. Salt, only if you're friends with the trader. You eat with your hands or a carved wooden spoon that doubles as your toothbrush. You chew slowly because if you finish too fast, your brain might remember how unsatisfying it was. Historians still debate whether peasants were genuinely content with this food or just too exhausted to complain. You sit on a log, there are no chairs, benches exist, but they're reserved for elders, nobles, or anyone with a bad back and good connections. You try to rest, but rest feels illegal. There's always something to fix, clean, or chase. A dog runs by. It's missing an ear, but has the energy of a caffeinated squirrel. Oh, it might be yours. You're not sure. Ownership is fluid in this century. If you feed something for 3 days, it belongs to you. Unless a noble wants it, then it's theirs, and you're fined for animal theft. You head to the village green, not because it's fun, because someone asked you to bring water. From the well, which is uphill, you grab a wooden bucket with a crack in it and start the climb. Halfway up, a man you've never seen before asks if you've paid your wood tax this month. You stare at him blankly. There is no wood tax, or maybe there is now. The rules change weekly and are usually enforced by men with sticks. You decide to risk it. You smile, say blessings on your family, and keep walking. It works, this time. You reach the well and join the queue. A long line of tired people, each clutching a container that's more patchwork than vessel. When it's your turn, you lower the rope carefully. The water is cold, murky, and smells slightly metallic. You shrug. It's better than nothing. Probably. You fill your bucket, start the journey back, and promptly spill a third of it down your leg. A child sees you and laughs. You think about tripping him. You don't. Growth. Back in the village, a rooster is perched atop the ale barrel like it owns the place. Someone is yelling about stolen onions. You pass a man asleep under a wagon and realize you envy him. Sleep is rare. Undisturbed sleep, mythical. You deliver the bucket, get no thanks, and go straight to splitting firewood. You have no idea what time it is. Clocks haven't made it to your village. You tell time by shadows, stomachs, and vague religious bells that may or may not be accurate. As the day drags on, you realize something profound. You haven't sat down properly in 10 hours, and your feet are wet in a way that feels spiritual. Your hands are covered in blisters, your tunic smells like damp dog and fear, and your spine has achieved a new shape. You briefly consider running away to become a monk, But then you remember, monks wake up even earlier. At this point, your legs are jelly, your back feels like it's fused into a permanent curve, and you haven't seen a piece of fruit since the Feast of St. Cabbage. Naturally, that means it's time for dinner, or as medieval peasants called it, not quite starvation. Tonight's menu? Surprise? It's turnips. Again, boiled, maybe, possibly just scraped raw from the dirt and warmed with body heat. On special days, there's gruel, a grayish slop that tastes like warm sorrow and wheat paste. If you're lucky, someone added wild garlic or leftover bone marrow. If you're really lucky, you're too tired to taste it. You sit around the hearth with your family. If hearth means a smoldering pile of sticks in a pit of ash, and family means 6 people chewing with open mouths and zero awareness of personal boundaries. You eat from a shared bowl because plates are a nobleman's invention and forks are still centuries away from being a thing. The youngest child has drooled in it. You make peace with that. The fire gives off more smoke than warmth. It tickles your lungs and coats the inside of your nose. Your eyes sting. Everyone in the hut smells like damp wool and boiled human. It's a very specific scent, somewhere between barn accident and forgotten sock. You try to make conversation. Someone grunts in response. That's the most social interaction you'll get all week. After dinner, it's time for recreation. Just kidding. You sharpen tools, patch holes in your shoes, or chase rats out of the food stores with a stick. If someone brought home news, like a cow giving birth or a stranger passing through town, it'll be retold 17 times until it becomes prophecy. The hut is now lit by a single tallow candle, made from animal fat. It smells like regret. It's not romantic, it's barely functional. Shadows dance on the walls like medieval horror puppets, and everything flickers like a haunted Instagram filter. Suddenly, there's a knock at the door. Knocking means news. You brace yourself. A neighbor has come to report that Old Man Hobbs fell into a ditch and is now stuck. Again, this is the 4th time this season. The village votes to leave him there until morning. You nod in solemn agreement. Hobbs probably deserves it. Outside, the moon is rising, which means the temperature is dropping. You pull your damp cloak tighter and listen for wolves. Not metaphorical wolves. Actual, howling, teeth-filled wolves. They're real and they're hungry. You once lost a cousin to one. Probably could have been bandits. Hard to say. Either way, he's gone. You retreat indoors, stepping over a chicken that refuses to move. The room is stuffy. Your little brother is poking the fire with a stick that's too short. Your mother slaps his hand. The stick catches flame. Everyone panics for 3 seconds, then shrugs. Historians still argue whether medieval fire safety protocols existed or if they were just spiritual suggestions from the saints. Before bed, you say your prayers, not out of devotion, out of fear. You live in a world where the line between illness and sin is blurry, and the local priest once tried to exorcise hiccups. Better safe than sorry. You kneel on the dirt, fold your hands, and whisper a request to not die in your sleep. Or if you do, that it be quick, or that someone inherits your only pair of non-holy socks. Then comes the worst part of the day, trying to sleep. The bed is straw, mostly, infested with bugs. There's no mattress, no pillow, and no sense of comfort. You curl up next to someone who hasn't bathed since the last eclipse, and you pull a rough wool blanket over your head to keep out the drafts. And the mice? You close your eyes, you're sore, exhausted, and still slightly hungry. You begin to drift off. But then your neighbor snores like a drowning goat. You jolt awake. Try again. This time you make it almost 3 minutes before someone coughs. Loudly, wetly, you mentally prepare yourself for the plague just in case. Eventually, you fall into a shallow, uncomfortable sleep. Until the rooster crows. At 4 in the bloody morning. You sit up, stare into the darkness, and think, I've made a terrible mistake. Too late. You're in medieval times now. You drag yourself out of your bug-infested straw bed, unsure whether your legs still work or if your body has finally given up. Spoiler, they work. Barely. But your right ankle makes a noise like someone stepping on a wet sponge. The rooster is still crowing. Loudly, proudly, repeatedly. He knows you hate him. He likes that. It's still dark, and your breath is fogging again. Indoors, there's no insulation in your hut, just gaps in the wall where wind and small animals come to visit. You reach for your tunic, which has somehow grown colder overnight, and slip it on like a damp paper bag. It sticks to your skin. You consider screaming. You don't. You're too tired. Outside, the village is silent, save for a few coughs and one early riser already chasing a pig through the fog. You join the morning shuffle toward your job, which today is digging. Again. Because in medieval Europe, if you're not growing something, you're burying something. Sometimes both. The cycle is poetic in a deeply miserable way. You arrive at the Lord's field. He's the reason you're here. Him and the bizarre social hierarchy that places nobles at the top, monks in the middle, and you somewhere below a particularly charming mule. The field is frozen. Your wooden hoe bounces off the ground like a rejected toy. Your hands are numb, your breath visible, and your stomach empty. Suddenly, a horn blows. Oh no. That means it's inspection day. A minor noble arrives on horseback, cloaked in enough fur to make you question your vegetarian ideals. His boots are polished, his cheeks rosy, his horse is better fed than most of the village. He looks down at you and frowns, not because you're doing anything wrong, but because you exist. He asks why the earth isn't already plowed. You stammer something about frost. He doesn't care. He's never plowed anything in his life except maybe political alliances. He gestures vaguely and tells you to make it work. Then he rides off, leaving behind hoofprints and emotional trauma. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants hated their lords or just accepted them the way one accepts rainstorms or constipation. Inevitable, unpleasant, and oddly specific. You return to your work. A few hours later, someone announces it's time for Mass. You drop your tools and trudge to the village church, which is mostly mud and stone and smells like damp wood and incense and maybe a dead bird in the rafters. You kneel on a cold stone floor, your knees crunching like stale bread. The priest begins his sermon in Latin. No one understands Latin. You nod solemnly anyway. The sermon lasts about an hour. You spend most of it trying not to fall asleep while balancing the need to look pious. You succeed, barely. A child sneezes mid-blessing, and half the room flinches, just in case. After Mass, it's market time, which sounds fun, it isn't. The market is a loosely defined area near the well where people lay out their goods on old blankets. Goods might include 1 chicken, 2 leeks, a cracked pot, or a pair of shoes held together by dreams. You have nothing to trade today except a bag of turnip seeds and a riddle you overheard last week. You try your luck anyway. You approach a vendor selling smoked fish. The fish smells like it died twice. You ask if he'll trade for seeds. He eyes you, eyes the seeds, eyes you again, says no, offers a deal, fish for seeds and information about the goat trial from yesterday. You accept, because medieval life is just bartering with plot twists. You eat the fish, it's chewy, you regret everything. As you walk home, a monk passes by muttering something about relics. You nod respectfully. He might be carrying a piece of a saint's toenail in a silver box, or maybe it's just a chicken bone. Who's to say? Religion in this time is equal parts reverence and improv theater. You pass the stocks. They're empty today. A blessing. You pass the graveyard. It's fuller. Less of a blessing. You pass your cousin who's building a fence out of sticks and ambition. He waves. You wave back. Then you trip. Because of course you do. Your ankle twists, your body flops, and you land in a puddle of mud that may or may not be entirely water-based. You lie there for a moment, face down, wondering if this is how you go. Not in battle, not from plague, but from a poorly timed patch of moss and zero traction footwear. A dog barks in the distance. You sit up. It's time to go home. You limp back into the village, mud soaking through your tunic, ankle throbbing like a guilty conscience. A goose hisses at you from someone's doorway. You hiss back. It doesn't budge. You're losing an argument to poultry. This is medieval Europe. Hierarchies are real, and the goose wins. As you pass the well, you spot a few villagers gathering around something. You hobble closer. Someone found a miracle root. It's shaped vaguely like a human foot and apparently cures everything from joint pain to demonic possession. A man is already rubbing it on his bald spot while chanting. You make a mental note to avoid drinking from the well for a few days. Back at your hut, You try to clean yourself up, but remember, you don't have soap. Soap is expensive and reserved for people with dowries or titles. You grab a cloth, more whole than fabric, and start scraping dried mud off your skin like you're exfoliating with a rock, which actually might work better. Your mother suggests you see the local healer for your ankle. You hesitate. Last time, she treated someone's cough by placing a live frog on their chest and whispering to it. Still, she's your best option. You hobble over to her hut, which smells strongly of garlic, damp moss, and ambition. She examines your ankle with all the medical professionalism of someone who once heard a rumor about healing. She nods gravely and announces, "Ah, yes, the wind has entered your foot." You blink. She means bad air or miasma, the medieval explanation for everything from stubbed toes to death. She offers 3 treatments: rub it with warm goose fat, chant at the moon, or tie a dead mole to it overnight. You choose the goose fat, for now. Historians still debate whether medieval folk medicine actually worked or if sheer willpower was doing all the heavy lifting. You hobble home and lie on your straw bed, ankle propped up on a log. A sibling asks if you're dying. You say, "Not yet." They look disappointed. Evening falls again, and the village prepares for a small gathering. The local Lord Steward is coming by to check on things. That usually means taxes, or forced labor, or both. You gather in the village square with everyone else. The steward arrives in a fine cloak that somehow resists all mud. He reads a list of what each household owes this month: 3 chickens, 2 sacks of barley, half a goat, and, mysteriously, 1 apology for last week's sarcasm. You don't ask. It turns out someone stole a sheep from the Lord's flock. The punishment is severe: a public confession and an afternoon in the stocks. No one admits to it. You glance at the neighbor's sheep who is suspiciously trying to look inconspicuous. Sheep are terrible at hiding guilt. The steward decides to encourage honesty by imposing a new rule. Anyone who can't pay their taxes will owe labor, which is code for building things the Lord will probably take credit for, like roads to his wine cellar. The meeting ends, no applause, just a shared silence full of internal screaming. On your way back, your friend Thomas catches up to you. Thomas is 17, smells like horse sweat and smoked eel, and has been courting a girl named Agnes for 3 years without success. He says he's finally going to propose. Tonight. You nod. That's bold. Also mildly doomed. Agnes once bit a merchant for looking at her donkey wrong. Thomas asks for advice. You tell him to offer her a gift. He says he has a goose feather and a jar of beet jelly. You tell him he's basically a noble. You arrive home and discover your family is trying to make soup from things that don't technically belong in soup. There's bark, wild garlic, something gelatinous from the pond, and a questionable egg. You eat it anyway. Your standards have dissolved. As the night grows colder, a storm rolls in. Rain lashes the hut's roof like it's trying to erase your family tree. The wind howls, your blanket is damp. Again, someone sneezes violently. You pray it's not the beginning of another village-wide illness. Last time, it was swollen neck fever. You never found out what it was, but 3 people lost their sense of smell. You close your eyes. Your ankle pulses, your stomach growls. You consider your choices. You didn't choose this life. But then again, no one did. You were born into it, and surviving it is a daily victory. Just as you're about to drift off, Thomas bursts in. She said yes. You cheer quietly. True love, or at least mild acceptance, has survived another day in medieval hell. Then your roof leaks directly into your eye. The next morning begins as expected, with the rooster screaming into your eardrums like a medieval alarm clock designed by your worst enemy. You groan, shift your aching body, and realize your ankle still hates you. It throbs with the kind of persistent ache that makes you question your will to live and your decision to walk yesterday. Someone in the hut is already up, stoking the fire with damp sticks that hiss in protest. The smell of wet ash fills the room, blending perfectly with the scent of fermented sweat and livestock. You sit up slowly, brushing straw from your face. A rat scurries across the floor. You salute it out of mutual respect. Today is laundry day? Or rather, the closest thing medieval peasants have to laundry day. You gather your clothes, yes, all of them, and head to the stream with a few others from the village. The stream is barely flowing and smells vaguely like moss and despair. You kneel at the edge, dunk your tunic, and start scrubbing it with river stones like you're trying to erase its sins. Soap? That's for royalty and monasteries. You use lye, ash, or just very aggressive rinsing. Someone downstream is also doing their laundry, another person is rinsing vegetables, and a third is washing their feet. You all pretend not to notice because acknowledging hygiene overlap is a fast way to start a theological debate, or a duel, or both. While scrubbing, you overhear a rumor. A traveler passed through a nearby village and said they had running water. No one believes him. Clearly a madman, or a bard, or French. You wring out your tunic with frozen fingers and lay it over a bush to dry. It will take hours, possibly days. In the meantime, you just wear the other one, the one that still smells like goat breath and regret. Back in the village, the blacksmith is having a moment. His apprentice melted an entire batch of nails. Again, the blacksmith is shouting in a language that consists of 30% curse words and Nasirat creative threats involving anvils. You pause to admire the artistry. You also pause because your ankle has decided to strike. You limp toward the healer's hut for an update. She's made a new poultice for you. It involves crushed garlic, warm wine, and a piece of cloth that might have once been a sock. She tells you to tie it to your leg, say 3 Hail Marys, and avoid eye contact with cats for the rest of the day. You nod. This feels scientifically sound. Historians still argue whether medieval medicine was helpful or just elaborate superstition with props. Your next task is to help reinforce the village fence. This is important, not because of pride or property boundaries, but because wild boars have been spotted nearby. Again, last time, a particularly bold one wandered into the village square and bit the baker. The baker bit it back. It was a whole thing. You drag bundles of thorny brushwood to the edge of the field, arranging them into makeshift barricades. Your hands are scratched, your arms burn. You begin to suspect that surf is just short for suffering enthusiast. As you're working, a group of children run by playing plague doctor. One wears a beak-like mask made from paper and hay. Another chases him with a broom, yelling, "Unclean, unclean." Everyone laughs, then coughs. The laughter stops. A little later, the reeve makes an announcement. A traveling monk has arrived and will be giving a sermon at sunset. Attendance is expected. You sigh. You wanted to rest your foot, but apparently divine guilt takes precedence. The monk is from a far-off monastery. He speaks in Latin, but also in terrifying metaphors about fire, worms, and eternal suffering. He says God sees all, even the sins you commit in your dreams. You glance nervously at Thomas, who is very much not making eye contact. The monk then launches into a dramatic parable about a man who refused to pay his grain tithe and was struck by lightning during a sneeze. The moral is unclear. Possibly pay your tithes. Possibly don't sneeze. The villagers nod solemnly either way. You limp home through the dusk light, your stomach growling like a vengeful squirrel. Dinner is already cooking. Boiled cabbage with turnip bits and a single questionable mushroom. You eat it slowly, chewing each bite like it might be your last. Because it could be. Night falls and the wind picks up. The hut creaks like it's trying to tell you secrets. The fire crackles. You share stories with your siblings in hushed tones about ghosts, banshees, and the time old man Hobbs supposedly spoke to a tree and it answered. He hasn't been the same since. You lie down on your straw bed, ankle wrapped in garlic sock science, stomach half full, brain entirely fried. Outside, an owl hoots. Inside, someone lets out a dramatic fart and blames the goat. You smile. It's almost peaceful. At sunrise, the rooster resumes its campaign of psychological warfare, crowing like it's auditioning for the role of most hated creature in the village. You groan, roll over, and try to pretend you're dead. Unfortunately, medieval death doesn't come with sleep-ins. Your ankle feels a bit better, or maybe you've just accepted the pain as part of your personality. You sit up and notice your tunic is still damp from yesterday's laundry session. You put it on anyway. In this century, dry clothes are a fantasy, like dragons, or dental hygiene. Today is market day in the next village over. That means it's time to walk, far, on muddy roads, with your already mildly broken foot. Perfect. You set out with a group of villagers. The road is mostly packed dirt and sharp rocks, occasionally interrupted by horse droppings, suspicious puddles, and the occasional patch of mystery slime. There are no signs, no directions, just instinct and hope. And sometimes the bones of people who didn't make it. You ignore those. Along the way, you pass a traveling tinker. He's pulling a squeaky cart full of pots, knives, and other metallic dreams. He offers you a spoon in exchange for one chicken feather and a prayer. You consider it. Spoons are rare, but so are feathers. You decide to pray extra hard and keep walking. The air is thick with the smell of peat fires and something that might be rotting cabbage. You try not to breathe too deeply. Eventually, the market appears, a clearing with blankets on the ground, crates of wilted vegetables, and one man aggressively selling eels. The eels are alive. One of them makes eye contact with you. You buy a turnip instead. Your village's barter system is in full swing. No coins, no receipts, just tense eye contact and declarations like, "I'll give you 2 onions for that rope if you swear on your wife's soul." The rope is frayed, the onions are soft, the deal is made. You wander the stalls. A woman sells dried herbs labeled love potion and plague blocker. You ask what's in them. She winks and says, "Mostly hope." You buy one, because why not? Historians still debate whether medieval love potions worked, or if the real aphrodisiac was simply not smelling like a foot. At another booth, someone's selling books. One is a single page with 4 misspelled words and a picture of a goat. The vendor says it's rare. You nod and move on. Nearby, a small crowd has gathered around a man juggling turnips while reciting psalms. You stop to watch. He drops one. The crowd boos. A child throws a leek at him. The man bows and declares himself cursed by St. Agatha. The crowd murmurs in agreement. He leaves. The child keeps the turnip. Midday arrives and hunger hits. You buy a pie. You don't ask what's in it. It tastes faintly of fish, possibly squirrel, and something floral. You pretend it's delicious. The vendor says it's his mother's recipe. You believe him, and now fear his mother. Suddenly, there's shouting. A dispute over a goose. Again, this goose allegedly stole someone's bread. The accused claims it's not the same goose, but the plaintiff insists it winked at him. A priest intervenes. He says the goose will be judged by holy signs. Everyone nods like this makes sense. You step away. By late afternoon, you begin the long walk home. Your ankle throbs again, your turnip sack is heavier than it should be, and your love potion is leaking. Still, there's a strange satisfaction in surviving the day without being accused of witchcraft or eaten by wolves. Back in the village, the mood is suspiciously cheerful. Turns out, someone returned from a pilgrimage and brought back stories. Big ones, like seeing the Pope, and a building with glass windows. The villagers gather around him like he's a prophet. He describes a city where people wear clean robes, use water that flows indoors, and eat things called oranges. No one knows what an orange is. They suspect it's a kind of fish. Later that evening, Agnes, yes, that Agnes, visits your family's hut. She's officially accepting Thomas's proposal. She brings a gift. 3 eggs and a small wheel of cheese. Your family reacts like she handed over the crown jewels. You spend the evening celebrating with watery ale and a stew that actually has meat in it. A sliver of rabbit, but still, it counts. Spirits are high, someone starts singing. It's off-key, but sincere. You join in. Later, lying in your scratchy bed, stomach fuller than usual, body aching in 12 unique places, you stare at the dark ceiling and think, maybe today wasn't the worst. Then you feel something crawling on your leg. Nope. Still medieval. The next morning, you awaken to the sound of hammering. Rhythmic, angry hammering. For a moment, you think it's inside your head. Then you remember, it's repair day. The village council, meaning 3 elderly men and 1 goat with attitude, has declared that the communal barn must be fortified before the rains. Which is optimistic, since the barn already leaks like a stabbed wineskin. You drag yourself out of bed, stretch your arms, and hear something pop that probably shouldn't. Your ankle is tolerable, which in medieval terms means still attached. You shuffle out into the early light, greeted by a fog thick enough to chew. The barn is a disaster. Its walls are slouching like they're embarrassed to be there, and the roof appears to be held together by birds' nests and prayer. A few villagers are already at work, including Thomas, who looks smug in his engaged man energy. He's swinging a hammer like it owes him money. Agnes watches from a distance, arms crossed, expression unreadable, possibly impressed, possibly planning his funeral, hard to say with Agnes. You're handed a bundle of tools. Tools, well, in this context, means splintered wood, a bent nail, and a pair of rusted iron tongs that could double as an instrument of torture. You grab the least dangerous object and begin helping patch holes in the barn walls with woven branches, mud, and hope. An hour in, someone discovers a wasp nest. That's when things get exciting. The wasps, understandably furious at the structural intrusion, begin swarming. People scatter. One man drops his pants and runs screaming. A child throws a potato at them. You dive into a hay pile and get a mouthful of last year's harvest. The wasps claim the ladder and declare victory. Everyone votes to repair the other side of the barn for now. Work resumes, slower, with constant glances toward the wasp-occupied zone. During a brief rest, the reeve announces an upcoming tax inspection. Everyone groans. You haven't had coins since the pig bit the peddler and the fine wiped out your savings. The taxes aren't paid in money anyway. They're collected in goods. Barley, eggs, wool, or, if you're truly desperate, days of service. That's how you ended up building the Lord's sheep wall last spring, and that's how you broke your last pair of shoes. Historians still debate whether these taxes actually supported infrastructure or just the Lord's cheese addiction. As the sun climbs, so does your hunger. You're offered a bit of dried bread and a smear of goat butter. The bread is more weapon than food. You dunk it in ale to soften it, bite down, and feel your molar shift like it's trying to leave the premises. You spend the afternoon collecting firewood. This is a delicate art. You must gather enough to keep your hut warm, but not so much that the local forester accuses you of theft from the crown, which is wild, because the crown has never once chopped a tree in its life. But rules are rules, and those rules are enforced by Jeffrey, the forester, whose moral compass points mostly to Grumpy. You return with a modest bundle, only to find Jeffrey lurking like a squirrel with a badge. He eyes your stick suspiciously. From the East Grove, he asks. No, you lie. From the hedgerow. He squints. You squint back. It's a medieval standoff. Eventually, he grunts and walks away. You exhale, victorious. This is your Super Bowl. Back in the village, preparations for the tax collector's visit have everyone pretending to be more productive than usual. The smith is hammering metal that doesn't need hammering. The weaver is spinning thread at a speed that could cause friction fires. Someone's trying to make their pig look fatter by tying moss to its underside. Your family digs out their hidden stash, a slightly shriveled onion, one decent egg, and the good wooden spoon. You place them carefully on a linen scrap that's been bleached exactly once and pretend it's a feast. The goal is to appear humble but not destitute, pious but not pitiful. You don't want charity, you just want to be taxed gently. As night falls, the village gathers in a rare moment of shared anxiety. The candlelight flickers off weary faces. A baby cries. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howls. You're not sure which is more ominous. You lie awake longer than usual. Maybe it's the stress, maybe it's the soup, which contained forest mushrooms that may or may not have been poisonous. Either way, your brain won't stop spinning. You think about the barn, still full of holes. You think about the wasps, who now technically own a part of the village. You think about Agnes, who smiled at Thomas for the first time in public. Maybe she might have just sneezed. Eventually, sleep takes you, and you dream of taxes. The horror. The morning mist clings to everything. Your clothes, your hair, your very spirit. The village is unusually quiet. That could mean three things. It's a holy day, a wolf got into the goat pen again, or the tax collector has arrived early. You pray it's wolves. Spoiler, it's not wolves. You hear the distinct sound of hooves on mud, followed by the wheezing creak of a gilded cart that looks wildly out of place in your village of tilted rooftops and passive-aggressive chickens. The cart is pulled by two horses cleaner than any human here and flanked by two guards who clearly skipped their personality training. Then, with a rustle of velvet and entitlement, the tax collector appears. He steps down like a man allergic to humility, robed, powdered, perfumed, And absolutely certain of his moral superiority, he surveys the village with the same energy one might reserve for judging spoiled milk. You know him by name, Sir Albrecht of Thornbury, but everyone just calls him Sir Shakedown. He announces his arrival with a scroll and a trumpet. The trumpet is played by a boy who is clearly not enjoying trumpet school. Everyone lines up in the square. Offerings are laid out in careful bundles: onions, skeins of wool, carved wooden spoons, eggs that are probably not past their prime. You place your family's offering on the pile and try not to make eye contact. Sir Albrecht's eyes scan the collection like a bored hawk. He picks up an egg, sniffs it, frowns, and tosses it back like it personally insulted him. Then comes the worst part, the questioning. He asks each villager to recite their tax history. You, of course, do not remember what happened last week, let alone last year. He frowns at your confusion, then pulls out a comically large ledger that appears to contain either tax records or ancient prophecies. His assistant flips through pages that smell like mold and justice. 3 eggs owed last season, he says, tapping the page. You hesitate. We gave 2. And a chicken foot? He raises a painted eyebrow. Not sufficient. You now owe a debt, which means labor, which means you are now volunteered to help dig a drainage trench for the Lord's manor. Perfect. Historians still argue whether tax records were accurate or if the scribes just made stuff up when they got bored. While the collector continues his ritual humiliation of the village, you and 3 others are led out of town by one of his guards to begin trench work. The road to the manor winds through a forest where sunlight goes to die. You trudge through mud, passing by moss-covered statues of saints and one suspiciously human-shaped lump that no one talks about. At the manor, you see luxury for the first time. Not actual gold and jewels, mind you, but glass windows, curtains, a separate kitchen. One man says, "The Lord has a chair with a back on it." You stare, stunned. This must be how gods live. You're handed a shovel made of real metal and pointed toward a soggy ditch filled with reeds and despair. You dig and dig and dig. Your fingers blister again. Your tunic clings with sweat, and at some point, you forget what year it is. A nobleman's son passes by on a pony. He sneers at you. The pony sneers too. You hate them both equally. By dusk, you're allowed to return home, provided you promise not to die on the manor's property. You trudge back, sore, muddy, and reeking of swamp rot. You don't even flinch when a crow lands on your shoulder. You're too tired to fight for dignity. Back in the village, Sir Albrecht has departed, taking with him 4 baskets of food, a silver brooch someone probably didn't mean to give up, and the last ounce of community morale. A few people are drinking weak ale by the fire pit. You join them. No one speaks. Someone hums a funeral dirge. It might be you. Dinner is boiled barley. Again, you chew it slowly, like it's a form of penance. Your sibling offers you a piece of dried apple. You cry a little. That night, as the fire crackles and the wind whistles through the cracks in your walls, you think, there has to be a better life out there. You've heard rumors of distant lands with spices, silks, and plumbing that doesn't involve a bucket and divine intervention. Places where people bathe more than twice a year. Places where bread has yeast. But you don't say it out loud. Dreams are dangerous here. You roll over, clutching your thin blanket, and listen to the familiar sounds. Creaking wood, sleeping chickens, the occasional wet cough that makes everyone hold their breath. The dark is thick, and the silence hums like an old lullaby. And just before you fall asleep, you whisper, "Maybe next year, I'll pay my egg taxes on time." You wake up the next morning with the kind of exhaustion that feels ancestral, like your soul has been hauling buckets for 10 generations. Your body creaks as you sit up, knees popping like old floorboards. Outside, the fog is dense again, thick enough to chew, as always, and the air smells like damp moss and goat enthusiasm. You stretch, wince, and then hear something you've been dreading all week. It's bath day. Bath day is not a relaxing affair. There are no scented candles, no fluffy towels, and certainly no privacy. What there is a wooden tub the size of a large bucket, lukewarm water reused by multiple family members, and the eternal presence of that one cousin who bathes like he's fighting demons. You help carry the tub outside. It sloshes like a sad soup. You're not even first. Your older brother goes first because he works harder. That's debatable. You watch him soak, then stand up, looking moderately cleaner but significantly more haunted. The water is now a strange color. It's your turn. You step in. It's warmish. Kind of. Maybe. And there are definitely things floating in it. You do your best. Splash some water. Scrub your limbs with lye soap that stings like it's judging you. A chicken watches from the fence, judging you too. Afterward, you dry off with a cloth that could generously be called textured. You feel marginally cleaner and 3 shades more humble. Historians still argue whether peasants bathed regularly or if once a season was already considered luxurious. Refreshed and slightly traumatized, you dress in your least crusty tunic and prepare for the next ordeal. Visiting the ale house, not for pleasure, for news, because in a world without Twitter, newspapers, or gossip apps, the ale house is where information and misunderstandings are born. You limp down the muddy path, passing 2 geese in a heated debate. You nod at them respectfully. Inside the ale house, the air is thick with smoke, the scent of old bread and whatever the bartender is fermenting behind the counter. Probably something illegal, definitely something alive. You sit at a table sticky with unknown history. Thomas is already there, looking smug. He's just learned that Agnes has a cousin in another village who owns a cart with wheel. Wedding is now inevitable. Other villagers drift in, each bringing their own scraps of news. Someone heard a nobleman's daughter ran off with a lute player. Another claims to have seen a ship from the east full of silk and fire-breathing cows. Someone else is spreading a theory that bread with holes in it can see into the future. You take a sip of your warm, weak ale and nod thoughtfully. Everything's possible when you're sleep-deprived and underfed. Mid-conversation, the door slams open and in walks Aldrich the Lame, a man who's injured in 3 different ways but somehow knows everything before everyone else. He limps dramatically to the center of the room and declares, "The bishop's coming." Silence. The bishop. That means holy inspections, spiritual guilt, and the distinct possibility of relics being paraded through town like celebrity cameos. People begin muttering prayers on instinct. One man spills his ale and immediately apologizes to God. The bishop's visit means you'll need to appear pious, educated, and slightly cleaner than usual. This is a challenge. Half the village can't read, and the other half thinks blasphemy means sneezing during mass. Preparations begin immediately. You're handed a broom and told to clean the front path like a saint might walk on it. You do your best, sweeping mud into more organized mud. The church is dusted with cloths that spread more dust than they remove. The altar is polished, and a previously dead candle is relit with fervor. Someone suggests writing a hymn. No one knows how. A child hums something vaguely holy sounding. That'll do. The next day, the bishop arrives. His horse is clean, his robe is white, his eyes are deeply suspicious. He walks through the village nodding slowly, flanked by 2 acolytes and a boy holding a suspiciously shiny incense burner. He blesses a goat, mistakes it for a child, and moves on. At the church, he gives a sermon so long your legs go numb. You try to look interested, you end up looking constipated. The bishop talks of virtue, penance, and tithes, mostly tithes. He sprinkles holy water, some of which lands in your ale. You pretend it's a blessing, not a beverage crisis. After the sermon, he inspects the villagers' homes. Yours is number 4 on the list. You race home to hide the suspicious love potion and anything that might look like pagan idolatry, which, in your hut, is a surprising number of items, including a potato carved vaguely like Saint Cuthbert. He enters, sniffs the air, frowns, and blesses your ceiling. Your little sister offers him a turnip. He takes it. You consider charging her for that later. He leaves without excommunication. Success. That night, the village breathes a collective sigh of relief. No one was cursed, condemned, or caught brewing devil's root beer in the cellar. You celebrate by eating actual meat. Something small, possibly squirrel. It's best not to ask. You lie down, body sore from pretending to be devout for 48 straight hours. As sleep creeps in, you smile faintly. You survive the bishop. Again. By now, you've accepted that medieval life is just a series of escalating inconveniences, occasionally interrupted by accidental blessings and deeply suspicious stew. So when you wake up to the sound of bells, you don't panic. Bells mean many things. Maybe someone's getting married, maybe someone's dead, maybe both, in that order. That's just how time works here. Turns out today is a festival day. Now don't get excited. Medieval festivals are not carnivals with funnel cakes and Ferris wheels. They're a mixture of religious guilt, local drunkenness, and a chance for someone to dress up as a saint while vomiting behind the barn. Still, it beats trench digging. The square is decorated with strips of cloth and sprigs of green that may or may not be weeds. A hastily built stage has been set up near the well, creaking ominously under the weight of a goat and two nervous minstrels. Children run about in mismatched costumes, one of them dressed as Plague. It's just a sack with holes cut out and garlic taped to his head. You're handed a mask made from bark and soot. Apparently, it represents humility or bees. You're not entirely sure. The celebration begins with a pageant, a sacred reenactment of a local miracle, which this year is the great porridge spill of St. Wilfrid's Day. A man dressed as a monk mimes knocking over a pot. The crowd gasps, a child wails, someone throws a turnip in awe. Then comes the dancing, if you can call it that. It's mostly people stomping in circles while clapping off beat. The music is produced by a man with a drum and another playing a stringed instrument that sounds like a weasel in distress. You're invited to join. You do. Your foot starts aching immediately. You keep dancing anyway because Agnes is watching, and even pain can be sexy if you're confident enough. The stew pot is enormous. It's bubbling in the center of the square, surrounded by gossip and garlic. You line up for your portion, trying not to look directly into the pot. It has a way of staring back. Your bowl contains chunks of turnip, barley, one suspiciously chewy thing, and an herb that tastes like apology. You slurp it happily. It's hot, which is rare, and it stays down, which is a miracle. After the feast, games begin. One of them is Chicken Chase, which is exactly what it sounds like. A blindfolded contestant tries to catch a very unimpressed chicken while the crowd heckles in Latin. Another game involves throwing cabbages at a painted board of a local tax collector. That one gets the biggest cheers. The cabbage to face ratio is impressively high. You try your luck at Guess the Relic, a game where you reach into a box and guess which saint's bone you're touching. You say left femur of St. Gregory. It turns out to be a spoon. You get a turnip as a consolation prize. Then, of course, there's the drinking. A barrel of festival ale is tapped, stronger than the usual morning brew, with the side effect of immediate confession or spontaneous weeping. Thomas downs 3 cups and declares he's going to build Agnes a new hut. Out of respect, everyone claps. Agnes rolls her eyes and sharpens a stick meaningfully. As evening falls, torches are lit and the storytelling begins. An old man with a beard that could house birds takes the stage. He tells a tale of forbidden love between a shepherd and a noble's daughter. It ends with heartbreak, exile, and a pig named Destiny. The crowd sighs, someone weeps, someone else throws a leak out of sheer emotion. You sit by the fire, the glow warming your face, your belly is full, your feet are sore but not broken, and for the first time in weeks, no one is arguing over goats. You look up at the stars, still the same ones as the day you were born, still too far away, still glittering with the same apathy they've always had for peasant troubles. Historians still argue whether medieval festivals truly offered joy or just temporary distraction from the crushing weight of feudal existence. But tonight, you don't care. Tonight, you're a little drunk, slightly full, vaguely hopeful, and sitting next to people who've also made it through another week. You close your eyes and hear someone start singing again, this time in tune. You smile. Then someone accidentally kicks you in the shin while dancing. It's fine. You're used to it. The morning after the festival hits you like a cart full of bricks with tax debt. Your head is pounding, your mouth tastes like boiled leather. Your tunic somehow smells worse than it did yesterday, which shouldn't be chemically possible. You sit up slowly, groaning like an old church door. Across the room, Thomas is curled up next to an empty stew pot, whispering something to it. You decide not to ask. The good news, you're not dead. The bad news, it's inventory day. Inventory day is when the local steward counts what the village claims to have versus what the Lord thinks the village should have versus what's actually just been eaten by rats. It's less about numbers and more about theater, pretending that you still own the goat that wandered off last month and hoping no one notices that the spare grain sack is actually just rocks in a clever burlap disguise. You hobble out to your family's storage chest. Inside are 2 onions, one of them definitely sentient, a handful of barley, some herbs you're 60% sure are edible, and a wooden spoon so old it might have seen the Black Death. You arrange everything artfully, like a peasant-themed museum exhibit. Still life with regret. The steward arrives by midday. He's not a noble, but he wants to be. He's got the posture of a man who's read one Latin word and thinks it makes him king. He carries a wax tablet, a quill, and the self-importance of someone who's never dug a latrine in winter. He inspects your supplies with an expression that can only be described as mild disdain with a hint of bean. He taps his quill and mutters numbers to himself. You nod along, pretending the inventory system isn't built entirely on lies and guesswork. He asks if you still own your chicken. You pause. You had a chicken. You might have eaten that chicken after last month's cold snap, or maybe it got eaten by something else. Either way, the answer is, of course, she's just out pecking. You point vaguely toward the woods. The steward doesn't look convinced, but your tone is confident and your finger is assertive. He nods and scribbles something. Success. Historians still debate whether inventory records from this era had any connection to reality, or if everyone was just really good at lying with a straight face. The steward moves on. You exhale. You keep exhaling because your stomach is now staging a rebellion. Turns out turnips, stew, ale, and festival cheese do not mix well in the human body. You dash toward the woods, locate your usual bush, and make peace with nature. Later, you're asked to help with a roof repair. Not your roof, of course. That would make sense. No, this is for Old Nan's hut, which has finally collapsed under the weight of time, moss, and 2 cats that refuse to move. Old Nan has lived in the same hut since before the last bishop was excommunicated for stealing church cheese. She's blind in one eye, speaks only in proverbs, and owns a spoon rumored to be magical. You carry that roof beam for her, because in this village, respect is measured in favors, not gold. While fixing the roof, a man named Ulrich tells you that someone in the next village over has discovered a book. A real one, with pages and drawings and everything. He says it's about herbs and stars. You all stare in wonder. Books are rare, expensive, precious, and mostly written by monks who were too tired to make stuff up. The idea that a peasant might read one is absurd. But Ulrich says he saw it, held it, flipped through 2 pages before the owner slapped his hand. He says the book claims that basil can calm your nerves and that the moon affects people's moods. Someone asks what nerves are. Ulrich says, tiny demons that live in your hands. Everyone nods. Makes sense. You return to your hut, brain buzzing. The idea of knowing things, real things, feels dangerous, empowering. You wonder what else might be in that book, what truths might be hiding in ink and parchment. Then a goose bites you on the ankle. You remember where you are. That evening, the wind howls through the village like a bored banshee. You help patch holes in the wall with dried mud and straw. Your sister sings a lullaby that might also be a warning spell. The hearth flickers, casting dancing shadows across the floor. Someone coughs. You pray it's not the beginning of something contagious. Again. You settle into your straw bed, exhausted from nothing and everything. Outside, the stars glitter coldly, indifferent to your labor, your stories, your aching back. But still, somewhere beyond this mud and hunger and stewed turnip nonsense, someone is reading a book about basil and the moon. You fall asleep wondering what else you'll never know. At sunrise, you find yourself blinking at the ceiling, wondering why it looks more open than usual. That's when you realize a chunk of the roof has collapsed during the night. A small patch of sky is now visible above your bed, along with a curious squirrel peeking in like it owns the lease. You groan, sit up, and immediately feel the stiffness in your back, legs, neck, basically everything that bends. Your ankle is still a bit swollen, but you're walking again, which technically qualifies as a miracle. Outside, the village is already buzzing with an uncomfortable energy. Not the usual, someone's goat is missing buzz. No, this is the heavy silence of shared dread. The royal taxman is coming. Now, you might think, didn't we already deal with taxes? Yes, but that was the local steward. The royal taxman is something else. This man isn't here for a few eggs and polite fiction. He's here for coin, and if you don't have coin, he'll accept goods of equivalent value, which can range from your livestock to your dignity. You and your family gather what you can: a dented pan, a half skein of wool, some dried leeks, and one of your least aggressive chickens. You try to fluff its feathers to make it look more valuable. The chicken does not appreciate this. Around midday, the taxman arrives. He doesn't ride in like Sir Albrecht, full of velvet and smug superiority. No, this one is quiet, precise, and very much dead-eyed. His horse is plain, his clothes are dusty, but his ledger, oh, that thing looks like it bites. The man barely speaks. He just gestures for items and occasionally grunts in Latin. You're not sure he's human. He looks at your offering. He pokes the wool. He picks up the pan and sniffs it. He holds up the chicken and stares it directly in the eyes. You hold your breath. Finally, he nods. He accepts your offering. No fines, no threats. You exhale so hard your sibling thinks you're having a religious moment. Historians still argue whether royal taxes were efficiently collected or simply a traveling extortion service with fancier robes. After he leaves, the village lets out a collective sigh. Some weep, some celebrate. Someone immediately drinks an entire flask of mead and dances with a rake. You join in, slightly woozy from relief, and spend the rest of the afternoon helping patch your neighbor's cartwheel. She pays you with a single apple, wrinkled but real. You eat it slowly, savoring the crunch like it's forbidden fruit from a mythical land where meals include flavor. Later, you help Thomas with his hut expansion. Agnes wants space for herbs, which may or may not mean poisons. Thomas is building it anyway. That's love. Your fingers ache from hammering pegs and hauling beams, but you don't mind. You even get to stand on a ladder for 5 full minutes before the bottom gives out and you land in a bale of hay. No injuries, just pride damage, and hay in places hay should never be. That evening, the priest holds a small prayer circle. He speaks of humility, service, and avoiding sin, especially during tax season. You nod along. He's sweating profusely, possibly from guilt or just poor robe ventilation. After the service, you catch wind of a strange rumor. Apparently, someone in the nearby town tried to forge a coin. A coin, a fake piece of royal currency. The kind that could buy you out of at least 3 beatings. They say the man was caught, branded, and made to stand in the stocks with a sign that read, "I lie in metal." No one's exactly sure what that means, but everyone agrees it sounds dramatic. You lie awake thinking about that forged coin. How do you even make one? Who taught him? Could it work? Not that you would do such a thing. No, of course not. You're a pious, honest soul. But also, hypothetically, if you had a mold and some pewter, you shake the thought from your head and roll over, your straw mattress crunches, you accidentally poke yourself with a barley husk. Again. Sleep is slow to come, but eventually it does, accompanied by dreams of coins with your face on them and chickens that lay gold. You wake up once to the sound of your sibling mumbling in their sleep, something about basil and demons. You nod. Makes sense. You wake up to yelling, again. But this time, it's not the usual morning argument over who finished the last of the turnip stew or whether the pig really belongs to your cousin. No, this yelling is more dramatic, urgent, the kind of yelling that usually precedes a mob or a wedding, or both. You hobble outside, rubbing the sleep from your eyes with a fistful of hay because that's just what your life is now, and find half the village gathered near the well. At the center stands Hilda, the baker's wife, pointing at the ground with the intensity of a prophet. "There," she shouts, "that's the mark." You lean closer. It's a hole, a shallow hole, possibly made by a boot, possibly made by a pig, possibly made by Hilda herself during one of her visions. She claims it's proof of witchcraft, that someone in the village is consorting with unnatural forces. You sigh. deeply. This is the third witch scare this season. Historically speaking, accusations of witchcraft were often used as a way to explain why crops failed, cows stopped producing milk, or people just generally hated each other. Scholars still argue whether villagers genuinely believed in witches or if it was all just a convenient excuse for petty revenge. You look around, no one wants to be the accused, but everyone wants to accuse someone. An old man coughs suspiciously. 3 people immediately take a step away from him. A woman admits to having had a dream where a dog talked to her. 4 people gasp. One crosses themselves with such force they slap their own face. Eventually, all eyes turn toward Bertha, the weaver. Why? Because she owns a cat, a black cat. Bertha raises an eyebrow. It eats mice, she says flatly, unlike all of you. But the tide has turned. People start mumbling. She's too quiet. She talks to herbs. Once she laughed during Mass. Suspicious. Very suspicious. The priest arrives to investigate. He performs a witch test. He asks Bertha to say the Lord's Prayer. She does, in perfect Latin. The villagers are shocked. No one even knew she could speak. Suspicion deepens. Bertha rolls her eyes and walks away. The crowd disperses awkwardly. Someone mutters about keeping an eye on her. Someone else tries to blame the goat. The goat sneezes and seals its fate as the next witch. By midday, the excitement dies down, replaced by the crushing mundanity of actual chores. You're assigned to dig a new latrine because the old one has, how shall we say, reached capacity. You dig carefully, methodically, praying you don't hit anything. Historical, or worse, still soft. During a break, you sit by the field's edge, eating a slice of bread so hard it could stop an arrow. You dip it in ale, stare into the middle distance, and contemplate mortality. Then a messenger rides into town. A real one, dusty, tired, on a horse that looks like it regrets ever being born. He's carrying news from the capital. That's several weeks away, and news from there is rare, usually tragic, occasionally interesting. The messenger announces, the king is dead. The village gasps. Then, long live the king. Everyone nods. That's how it works. Dead king, new king, nothing changes. Except, a new king might mean new laws, new taxes, or even, gasp, a new calendar. You remember last time they added a feast day and forgot to tell half the country? People fasted during the feast and feasted during the fast. Total chaos. 4 chickens went missing and no one ever found them. The priest says this is a time of great spiritual reckoning. The reeve says it's a time for stronger fences. Your mother says it's a time to hide the good barley. Everyone is correct. You spend the evening helping Thomas prep for his wedding. Agnes has made her demands clear. She wants a feast, a chair with a cushion, and at least 1 dried apple. You offer her 2. She stares at you with the intensity of a woman who once threw a beat at her own uncle. You lower your offer back to 1. After dinner, boiled lentils with mystery herbs, you lie back and stare at the ceiling, half expecting the squirrel to be back. It isn't. Just you and the stars again. You think about witches and kings. About Bertha, who's probably at home knitting curses into socks. About your ankle, which has finally stopped throbbing. And about the latrine, which definitely still is. The world is changing, or maybe it isn't. Maybe it's always been turnips, taxes, and people arguing about goats. But tonight, under a mostly intact roof, you close your eyes and think, at least I'm not the chicken. But no matter how many herbs you crushed with that rock pretending to be a mortar and pestle, your cough won't go away. The village healer says it's just bad air, but you've also heard rumors that someone on the other side of the valley coughed blood, then stopped showing up to Mass. That's never a good sign. And the priest has been acting odd lately. His sermons get longer and more feverish, filled with talk of sin, fire, and demons lurking behind every misfortune. Like that time your neighbor's cow gave birth to a calf with 2 heads. The village thought it was a sign from God. You just thought maybe it was inbreeding. But who asked you, right? You pass the church more frequently these days. Not out of faith, but out of habit, like someone pacing around their own panic. You light a candle for your soul, and 1 for your neighbors, and maybe 1 for the pig who keeps looking at you like it knows something. And the candle's flame flickers weirdly. You don't like that. The nights grow longer and colder. You shove straw between the slats of the walls and under the bed to keep the chill out. It doesn't work. Nothing works. Even the lice seem sluggish, which somehow makes you more concerned. And the rats? They're getting bolder. One looked you in the eye last night. You blinked first. Sleep, at this point, is a negotiation. You try to forget the howling wind, the sounds of coughing from 3 huts down, and the way the stars seem too sharp lately. You try to focus on the good. You have a roof, sort of. You have stew, sometimes. You have a name, although even that's been mispronounced for years. And yet, in some twisted way, you've grown used to this life. The scratch of wool, the dirt under your fingernails, the ache in your back that never quite goes away. It's all familiar, like a poorly stitched sock that still keeps your foot mostly warm. There's a comfort in the monotony. Wake, work, pray, eat, sleep, repeat, until the sky falls, until your Lord dies, until the Black Death rolls through, or until maybe, just maybe, nothing happens at all, and you simply keep going. And isn't that the strangest thing? Survival isn't glorious. It's not marked by banners or victories or heroic speeches. It's quiet. It's eating the same turnip for the 3rd night in a row and convincing yourself it has notes of flavor. It's listening to a rooster scream at 4 a.m. and not throwing your shoe at it because shoes are expensive. It's watching the fire die and not having enough wood to keep it alive, but choosing to stay anyway. And through it all, no one's writing songs about you. No bard will sing of your toothache, your lost boots, your failed attempts at love with the baker's daughter who thought you smelled like mold. You're a ghost before you're even dead. But that, perhaps, is where you find your legacy. Not in the grand gestures, but in the endurance. You kept going. You rose before the sun because someone had to grind the grain. You carried water from the well because someone had to wash the children. You buried your dead with shaking hands, then went back to tend the fields. And somehow, despite it all, the world turned. Despite the wars, the famines, the cruelty of lords, and the indifference of kings, despite plagues and cold and bad luck, you were there, quietly, steadily. And tonight, in your scratchy blanket cocoon, as the wind presses against your hut and the fire sputters into blackness, you close your eyes, not with fear, not with hope, but with the calm of someone who's made it through another day in a world that doesn't care if you do. And you sleep. Good night, dear peasant. If you're still awake, then you're stronger than the plague. But if your eyelids are drifting, let them fall like a fading bell at dusk. If you like this quiet little tragedy wrapped in hay and bad hygiene, leave a thought in the comments below. Maybe you'll be remembered. Maybe we'll drift together to the next sleepy tale, perhaps to Rome, or a Viking ship, or a Parisian sewer. But for now, shh. The chickens are finally quiet.